Welcome to If You Love This Planet. I'm Dr. Helen Caldicott, and in this program we talk about the greatest medical and environmental threats to all life, such as nuclear weapons and nuclear power, global warming, ozone depletion, toxic pollution, deforestation, and many other social and political issues that relate to global well-being. So if you love this planet, keep listening. Welcome to If You Love This Planet. I'm Dr. Helen Caldicott, and today on the program I'm speaking with a very special guest, Kono Taro, who is currently serving as Director General of Japan's Liberal Democratic Party's International Bureau. He is a fifth-term member of the House of Representatives in Japan. Kono has voiced strong concerns over the Japanese government's nuclear policy. He is especially critical of the government's pursuit of a so-called closed nuclear fuel cycle, whereby plutonium is extracted from spent fuel by nuclear waste reprocessing within Japan. Kono also opposes the building of new nuclear power plants, as the government has so far failed to deal with the issue of nuclear waste disposal. As chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Kono conducted research into a secret accord with the US government on the introduction of US nuclear weapons into Japan, resulting in him demanding that the government officially acknowledge the existence of the accord. Kono Taro joins me now. Welcome to If You Love This Planet, Kono.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. This is going to be a very important interview, I think, because we're now dealing with Fukushima and all the nuclear activities in Japan. I want you to please describe to the audience, as a prominent member of the Liberal Democratic Party, which has always been very conservative about nuclear power, what your stance has been on nuclear power in the past, Kono, before Fukushima.
Okay. I came to the Parliament 1996. And in 1997, after some study, I was convinced that Japan's nuclear fuel cycle is not working well, and there's no future. So I was asking to pull out of nuclear power slowly, meaning back in 1997, let's not build any more additional nuclear reactors, and let's have a nuclear reactor decommissioned after 40 years. Then by 2037, Japan would go nuclear-free. That was my position back in 1997, and it didn't change up to March 11th last year.
And tell me, how were you regarded by fellow members of your Liberal Democratic Party because of that stance that you adopted?
Well, LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party, has been pushing for the nuclear power for the last 50 years. So I was sort of a black sheep in the party.
And what has happened to your status since then?
Well, when it comes to the energy policy debate, people sort of thought I'm strange. So I was maverick in the energy policy.
Yes.
issue.
But now, since Fukushima, what do they think?
Well, they finally start listening to what I'm saying, and I get more and more younger members of the parliament agree with me now.
Yes. Now, Kono Taro, would you like to describe to the audience, please, how you felt during March 11th and soon thereafter as that dreadful earthquake, tsunami and nuclear accident occurred? Can you tell us how you responded, please?
Well, I was in the library of the Parliament in the meeting, and there was a big shake. It was a very long shake.
Yes.
And right after the earthquake, we heard all the bullet trains stopped safely. There was no utility gas leaking or anything, and the buildings were not damaged badly. So we were a little happy right after the earthquake.
This was
then
in Tokyo.
Tsunami, in Tokyo,
Yes.
and we heard the northern part of Japan was not badly shaken either.
Yes.
Not a great number of buildings were damaged by the earthquake.
Mm-hmm.
The tsunami came about a half an hour later, and we were watching that on TV, and it was just amazing. It's just unbelievable.
Mm.
And then we heard the news. There were some accident in the Fukushima nuclear reactors. We were not sure what were going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the government and TEPCO was supplying with the wrong information. They said it was a minor accident, nothing like meltdown or anything.
Yeah.
But then one day we turned on TV and saw nuclear reactor just exploding, or the building of the nuclear reactor just exploding. And all the monitoring posts went down right after tsunami, and the TEPCO were not able to recover their monitoring post.
You mean monitoring for radiation release?
That's right, that's
yes.
right.
Yes.
The TEPCO told us they lost the power for the monitoring post. But after even 1 week, they were not able to recover the power for the monitoring post. So I now believe they were trying to hide the numbers. And I think people in Japan were deceived for many, many days to come because TEPCO and the government kept telling us it wasn't meltdown or anything. But I think it was. They confirmed about 3 months later.
Yes, they confirmed 3 months later that within 3 days, 3 of the reactors, Unit 1, 2, and 3, had melted down, right?
That's right, that's right. And they should have known, within, 48 hours or so. But they deliberately told us that there was no damage like that. But a lot of experts were at the same time telling us it had to be meltdown. I mean, there was no nuclear reactor that can stand that kind of environment, so it had to be meltdown. That was the sort of agreement of the outside experts.
Yes.
But TEPCO and the Japanese government kept denying that. But after 3 months, they just totally changed the position and started telling us it was a meltdown.
I'm interviewing Mr. Kono Taro, who is a member of parliament in Japan, and a member of the Liberal Democratic Party. So, Kono, how did you... Well, first of all, I want to identify TEPCO. TEPCO is a Tokyo electric power company, which has very close relationships with the Japanese government. Would you like, Kono, to explain to the audience, please, what the relationship is between the Japanese government and TEPCO and how long it's been going on?
Well, it's a sort of a corrupt relationship. The nuclear reactor regulatory organization is under the Ministry of Economy and International Trade. They were supposed to be promoting the nuclear power and regulating the nuclear power at the same time.
At the same time, yep.
At the same time.
That's what the International Atomic Energy Agency does.
I think it's sort of violating the international rules, isn't it?
Yes.
And the top bureaucrats of the ministry, when they retire from the bureaucracy, they usually join TEPCO and become senior vice president of the company. That has been going on for many decades. And the TEPCO also give a huge amount of political contribution to then ruling Liberal Democratic Party.
Ah.
And now the ruling party, Democratic Party of Japan, DPJ, the TEPCO's labor union is one of the biggest campaign machine for members of DPJ, the parliamentary members of DPJ. So the politics and the ministry and the TEPCO are very, very in close relationship, and it's just a relationship of corrupt money. And same thing happens for like university professors. The nuclear professors of Tokyo University or Kyoto University receive a lot of R&D money from TEPCO. And their graduate student would join either a power company or nuclear reactor manufacturers. So university also go along with whatever TEPCO said. And the media before March 11th received a lot of commercial from power companies. There are 9 power companies in Japan, and they paid a very huge amount of commercial to, TV, newspaper, or news magazines. So they never really talked about the nuclear policies in Japan for many years. That changed March 11th slightly, but that was the situation after the March 11th.
Only slightly it's changed, Kono Taro?
Well, now the newspaper people were pretty cautious, and the television station, they told me that TEPCO is not able to give them any more commercials. They understand that. But the local television station outside of Tokyo still have a relationship with local power companies, namely the local news on local television station are paid by the local power company. So the local television stations are not willing to criticize the power companies, yet. So even today, the media is not a neutral.
It seems to me a very serious situation.
It is. It is.
I look at Chernobyl, and at least the Russians, however sort of primitive their society was, within 10 days they had evacuated huge numbers of people from areas which cannot be inhabited. Yet you look at Japan. Now, I know your population is much more intense and more dense in the Fukushima prefecture around the reactor, but there are people still living in areas which are so radioactive they would have been evacuated around Chernobyl, and yet the people still live there, and the children who are so sensitive to radiation and the pregnant women with fetuses who are so sensitive still live there. So as a physician and a pediatrician, which is what I am, I can't for the life of me understand why the Japanese government has been so regressive and so irresponsible towards its own people. Can you talk about that, Kono Taro?
Right after the accident, the Japanese government evacuated people living within 20-kilometer radius. And later, the government expanded it to 30 kilometers. They had a simulation which way radiation would go under the then weather, but the government concealed it. They had a simulation, and they could have told people where to go, but they didn't tell people. So some people moved from less radiated area to more condensed radiation area.